Welcome to the Grit Factor Podcast. I'm Drew Powell, and here we explore what it takes to succeed through the lens of guts, resilience, integrity, and tenacity. These are the values that drive high-performing leaders and shape the culture at the Insurance Group of America. Each episode will sit down with industry trailblazers, IGA team members, and inspiring professionals who have embraced grit to overcome challenges, seize opportunities, and create meaningful impact. Whether you're considering joining IGA or simply looking for the tools to take your career to the next level, you're in the right place. So buckle up. It's time to discover the Grit Factor. Well, Randy, thanks for being on the Grit Factor podcast, man.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah.
Known Jamie a long time, and it's good to be a part of his thing.
Yeah, he speaks very, very highly of you, my friend. And so we've had a couple interactions, and so I've been anxious to talk with you and learn from you and hear a little bit more. And let's just start right at the beginning. How did you get into this work? Tell us a little bit about the Wedge and just kind of the work you're doing.
Wow, that's an old story now. I mean, I started this 33 years ago, and
Wow.
I'd been a sales guy working in the construction industry, and there was a time economy got really bad, and all the contractors went bankrupt, and I had to find something else to do. And a friend of mine had a small advertising agency, went to work doing some projects, and started doing some sales training for some clients. And then my wife got pregnant, and I needed to make more money, so I kind of broke off and I go, "This is my deal." And one of my first 5 clients was an insurance agency,
Okay.
and that took me to lunch after working with him about 2 or 3 months. And he said, "I got some advice for you." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "You ought to focus on insurance only." I go, "Why is that?" He said, 3 reasons. He said, "Number one, I like your stuff. I think other people would too. We don't get a lot of good training." He said, "Number two, you're not going to find any internal competition. Nobody wants to do this job." And he said, "Number three, they make a lot of money. They can afford to pay you well."
Yeah.
And then he told me about a guy on the West Coast who did a lot of stuff in the insurance industry. I called that guy up, introduced myself. He said, "Write an article. If I like it, I'll publish it." So I wrote an article called "The Buck Stops Here, The Art and Science of Doing Deals." I wrote that article. He published it. And then I got a couple of new clients. And then all of a sudden, insurance became my niche. And then out of that, the Wedge evolved and life goes on.
Amazing. So, I mean, we could do a whole episode of just the power of finding your niche and, finding the people that you could serve well and all that kind of stuff. I love that you just kind of went all in this, and that's been 33 years that you've been doing that with insurance companies.
Yeah, that's right.
3 decades, man. I'm sure
It's a
you've learned a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you learn a lot. You learn a lot. You make a lot of mistakes. I mean, out of that has come 6 books and a technology platform, all designed. In fact, it's called Bignition. That's the deal behind it. Really, it's just this integrated platform to help insurance agencies go grow. And it's one of the things that Jamie uses, that whole platform.
Yeah.
So it makes it easier to go drive growth.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you be willing to unpack a little bit more about just that? Because I want to get into some sales culture stuff. I want to get into how you met Jamie and all that, but just help me understand a little bit more of that model and that system that you're working there.
Yeah. So the way I see it, in fact, over here on this side over here, is I call 7 steps to 7 figures. That's really a roadmap or a model to get producers from where they are to $1 million books. And it breaks it down to 7 steps. And I got also a model on the other side, what I call 5 steps to extraordinary growth for sales leaders. So it's the training and the roadmap for them. You put those 2 things together and you put the technology in the middle that glues it all up.
Yeah.
And that's called Bignition. And so it's really hard for a lot of agency leaders to what I'm going to say, install or implement a sales culture, because so many diverse ways of thinking, and you got different types of salespeople, and they're running random sales meetings and random goal setting, and maybe they're trying to do some sort of CRM platform, but it's off the shelf and it doesn't really fit. So it's like trying to put these 2 things together rather than put these 2 things together.
Right.
That's kind of what Bignition does.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, talk a little bit about how did you first meet Jamie? Give me your first impression. Talk about IGA and the leadership. Like, what stood out to you with those guys? It's such a great company.
Well, yeah, I met Jamie. Jamie was worked for one of my bigger clients at the time.
Okay.
And I got to know him. He came through the Wedge, and was just another one of about 60, 70, 80 producers that I trained at that firm. And then, and frankly, I didn't get to know him very well. He left there after they got gobbled up by private equity firm, started his own thing, and he called me immediately and said, I need a sales platform. Can we, can we implement this deal? And we did that. And that was about 10 years ago. And that dude has grown this firm from 300,000 in revenue to just under 10 million in about 10 years, which absolutely just thumps and trumps really 99% of other agencies out there. He would be in the top 1% in growth, I just promise you. And the majority of that's organic, through producers and coaching and developing producers. It's a unique story.
It's incredible. Yeah, for people that are listening or watching this, I'm curious how you would describe the culture of IGA from your seat and your perspective, because you're a trusted partner and have been part of helping propel that growth. And a lot of people that watch or listen to this are potential salespeople that want to come in and be a part of this culture. And so, what is your quasi unbiased take on the culture of IGA? Because you see a bunch, you're working with a
I
bunch
do.
of people. How is IGA different?
Well, I mean, it starts with Jamie. Jamie is a can do, get it done. N- n- wh- If you give him an idea and it makes sense, he just goes and does it.
Yeah.
There's no real politics. Um, he's he's really transparent, and like a lot of leaders, he's got a big ego and he's got a lot of pride, but he's both willing and able to kind of set that aside and keep digging in, figuring out, okay,
Yeah.
what's a better way to do this?
Yeah.
And so I think the ego and pride is what keeps driving them, and then the ability to set back is what enables them to go do things better. And as a
Yeah.
result, they're doing incredibly well, and he's attracting some great producers, and those producers are doing well.
When you said ego and pride, one thing that he told me at one point, and a lot of the reason why we do this podcast is he says, if Jamie, if anyone knows Jamie, he's very honest. Like, you don't ever have to wonder where you're staying, where you're at. And I
Right.
appreciate that about him. But he said, I was talking about this podcast and I was kind of telling him, man, I think you've got a lot to offer. You got a lot to say. You got a lot of different things. And he pushed back on that pretty immediately. And he's like, man, I got a lot of ego and pride, but my ego and pride is to build a great company so that people can, make a lot of money, be a part of a great culture. And he's very clear to say, my ego and pride is not about building the Jamie No brand. It's about having an incredible company, an incredible culture so people can reach their dreams. And I've hung on to that even for me personally, of like saying, if I'm going to have ego and pride about something, let it be about how I can serve and help other people. And I love that about him.
Yep. You named it. That's
Yeah.
him. Yep.
Well, let's talk a little bit just about, since this is your world, let's talk about just sales. This idea of building a sales team. There's tons of different sales teams out there. But in your experience, what separates a good sales organization from, say, like the forgettable ones?
Well, it starts off with talent, and
Okay.
you look at the NBA. The NBA is not loaded with guys who are 5'8".
Right.
They're loaded with guys that are 6'6" up to 7'2". They're fast, they're quick, they can jump, they've got the skills to shoot. They
Hmm.
fit the model. So the first thing to building a great sales culture is finding people that fit the model. Hence, what you guys are calling the grit factor. I wrote a book called Grit, and he kind of modeled this after that, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's interesting. I named the book Grit because I just like with the Wedge, I like a single word that I have a chance to kind of own, if you will,
Hmm.
relationship something. But what motivated that was the lady who wrote the book Grit, Angela. It'll come to me in a little while. I just had a tip of my tongue, but Grit. When she's talking about it, she did a lot of research. I think she's Harvard or Stanford or something like that. Um, Looked at a lot of things in the academies, Naval Academy, Army Academy, blah blah blah, and really, the people who made it were the people who had a lot of perseverance and passion, persistence and passion.
Hmm.
And you can persevere through stuff, and you got the passion, something you want.
Mm.
The next one supersedes talent in a lot of ways. And so when you look at who makes it in the insurance business, a lot of it is if you will just keep trying and moving toward the outcome that you want and keep working to get better, I mean, you'll do it. The challenge becomes if you are entitled, or the challenge becomes if you just don't have that kind of drive and want to go get it,
Right.
then this is a tough business. So for those guys that have, you're kind of like that, like when you played sports, and what's kind of interesting, one of my clients hires a lot of athletes, and I've told them, I was like, man, there's two kind of athletes. There's a prima donna who was just always easy for them. Problem
Mm,
with them, they don't take feedback very well.
right.
And then you got that middle of the road kind of just had to grind it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like grind it out is what grit is. That's what this podcast is all about. That's what my book's all about. If you
Mm-hmm.
got people that have got the ability to go grind it out, then you give them the tools, the wedge, you give them differentiation. We run sales meetings that make them think. We do goal setting to give them clarity. Then, man, you can make a lot of money in this business.
Yeah. Yeah. On that same note, how much does the culture of an organization play into like a salesperson's success versus maybe their own individual skill set? How does that factor in?
Well, you bring your individual skill set to the culture. And the
Okay.
culture, yeah. So the culture is either performance culture, like Nick Saban had a performance culture, right? He got great talent, but he also had a performance culture in a powerful way. So the culture has a lot to do with it. Some cultures we give them enough rope to hang themselves, so
Mm-hmm.
let them in, and we'll let you kind of go figure it out. Other cultures don't even have rope. They just so nobody ever hangs themselves. They just come in and they do whatever they do, and as long as they're not causing problems, they're fine, right? They're
Right.
professionals. We let them do what they want to do. So then you got the other culture that says, I really do believe I've got a powerful way that works. I've got a process that works. I've got ways we're going to do. We got ways we're going to do things, and it's proven. So we're looking for people that fit that model. And then when you do, and you get into that environment, it takes people up 3x, 4x compared to what they
Mm-hmm.
would have done in a more of a neutral sort of culture. Culture is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. If and I know you've been there, but as you walk through the offices and the halls of IGA, you can see culture. I mean, it's in the color palette, it's in the on the walls. I mean, it's interwoven into the DNA of the place, and I think that's probably a big part of IGA's success over the last few years and this is probably, due to a lot of your coaching is I feel like there's a lot of clarity there as to what's going to work and what's not going to work in that culture. Like who is going to work and who won't work, and I think that's a part of the pretty robust interview process that IGA has to even become on the team because they work hard to weed out, you know,
Very
who's
hard
not
to
going to
weed
work.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, just keep tying the two things together. So again, what he's using is really, for the most part, what I mapped out in the book Grit.
Okay.
And, and in that book, we talk a lot about an evidence-based hiring process. So now let's go back to basketball.
Okay.
If you were a sophomore in high school, and, I'm a D1 coach, and I'm looking for players. Um, one of the things I want to meet you and all that sort of stuff and see what you like. But more than anything, I want to put you on the court, put a basketball in your hand, and see you just go around and let me see how good a
Hmm.
handles you got, see what your shots like. Then I'm gonna put somebody on you, and then I'm gonna see how you do. And then I'm gonna put you on somebody and see, can you play defense? Then we're gonna go 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 5-on-5, and then we'll see what your
Hmm.
leadership. In other words, it's all things I get to see.
Yeah.
And the problem with most interview processes, there's no evidence. It's just feeling.
Right.
So when you set up an interview process that's got exercises and things people have to do, now you start to get the evidence what's going on. And one of the critical things, um, and not all my clients do it, and que sera, but I have them. I want a producer to read the wedge and write me an executive summary. Why? Reading it shows a commitment and getting something done. So okay, so you can get something done, you can follow through. You write the executive summary. If you can't write very well, you're probably not going to be very good in this business
Mm.
because your ability to articulate yourself on a piece of paper is important. Um, once you've read it, we've already started the indoctrination process of how we want to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Because you read it, now I can see I'm going to make you defend certain things. And as you have to defend it, can you handle it? And I'm going to put pressure on you. When I put that pressure on you, how do you handle that pressure?
Mm-hmm.
Because you start going after large accounts, it's pressure. So I get
Pressure.
to find out so much about a person by starting off with that one simple step of read this, do me an executive summary, and then I can see how smart you are. Can you articulate this stuff? Can you synthesize that information to, if you're a young guy and you're single, how would you use this to pick up a girl that already has a boyfriend? If you already have a job, or if you're already married and all that sort of stuff, but you have a previous job, how would you have used this in that previous job? So I want to see that can their brain synthesize this information
Yeah.
the same way a baseball player would synthesize a swing to a golf swing, right?
Right. Right.
And that's
Well,
a sign of intelligence and all stuff.
it makes so much sense. I mean, just as a case study of what not to do, I mean, I just hired someone recently and I fell right into the trap that you just explained. Great resume, great in the interview, said all the right things, got him out on
All
the
in love.
court, fell in love. Oh, this was going to be a game changer. This was the guy that was going to lead us into the future. And got him out on the court, huge analogy. Well, I'm a big basketball guy, so I keep the basketball metaphors coming. I love it. But got him on the court and couldn't play.
Can play.
Couldn't play. And if I would have worked the process like what you're describing or process similar, it would have at least given me a better. Now I'm sure that's you can't bat 1,000, but it would have at least given me every opportunity
But
to.
be careful how you say that. You can bat really high. You
Right,
can bat
right.
really high. And so basically you got to come back full circle and go, why am I not asking those tougher questions? Why am I not putting them on the court? Why am I not doing that stuff? What am I afraid of?
Yes, fear.
And well, yeah, and then what generally comes down to is I don't have enough people in my pipeline.
Hmm.
What if I make the guy mad and he doesn't come back and he was really great, and all those things kick into our mind, and then we become wimpy.
Or even the tyranny of just the urgent of, man, I got to do this. I'm under the gun, whatever. And that's usually my thing is I move so fast that sometimes slowing down to work a process, I need to discipline myself to do that. But to your point though, I've actually lost time moving that
Oh
fast.
yeah, yeah. Moving fast is a great if having the ability to move fast is a great ability to have. Having the discipline to look at the truth and slow down is a great character to have. And sometimes you
Yeah.
just have to let go. I know
Gosh,
I
that's.
can, but I need to slow it down and get clear about this and find out, can this person do the job? If
Could
not, you
you
waste a lot of money.
could you repeat that? Say that line one more time. That was so good. Moving fast, a great discipline, but a great character to have is
Yeah,
the
there's
the
really that ability to slow down and look at it for what it really is.
yeah. Gosh,
Yeah.
that's good. I needed to hear that today personally. Talk a little bit about just leadership as far as what leadership styles or kinds of leadership really helps unlock success for a salesperson long term. Is there a certain kind that you've seen really works well, or um, yeah, what's the key to that?
Well, I mean, you got to start off with you really got to care, because if you don't, you're working with just an object rather than a person, right? And so the caring, and then out of the caring, then what one of the first big things you'll do is you'll come up with a really well defined outcome. In other words, what does this producer want? Because we know what we want. We know what we want from the producer, but what does the producer want? And
Hmm.
without that really clear outcome, and then as you start to get the producer clear on what they want, then just like what you and I just went through, okay, well, hey, Mr. Producer, let's work through what are your biggest obstacles or fears, or what are the skills that you feel you need that you don't have, and let's build a plan of action that we're going to develop you to go become this thing, rather
Hmm.
than here's a phone book. I just hired you a sales guy. Hey, read the sales book, and I need you to go make money for me.
Right.
And frankly, even though nobody would admit that that's what they do, that's what a lot of people do.
I'm I'm not going to keep incriminating myself, but let's just say that I relate deeply to what you just said.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
because expediency, you want to get on with it. You don't have time. You don't want let's give them a chance to see what happens. And um, anyway, so that's life, right? That's life.
Yeah. Well, and I will say that even just talking with you, oddly, it actually gives, I think, gives people like me hope that there actually is a process. There is a framework we can work to up our batting average significantly
Oh, big time.
if we'll do it. So it's like I have gratitude for you and your company of like saying, okay, we've kind of cracked the code on how to do this. If you'll trust us, if you'll work with us, if we'll do it. I mean, IGA is a great example. I mean, they're killing it and they're doing it. So it can be done and it's being done, but just there's just a lot of hope in this conversation of like, especially if you're struggling in this area, that there is a way to do this to really produce growth and the results you're looking for.
Yeah, and then Jamie's also become probably my greatest expert as a client on what we'll call the GPI, the grit personality inventory.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I both, we both have personalities. Break down the personality, 8 core characteristics. One is drive, one is assertiveness, one is attention to detail, one is how much recognition do I need, you're going down the line. And all those things affect how you go about business, how you go about life, what your behaviors are. And so when you've got the right, so just like drive is like, remember from Top Gun, like I feel the need for speed, whatever it
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
I got to go make something happen. Well, drive is that I got to go make something happen. There's a lot of people that interview really well, they're really nice, but they don't have to go make something happen.
Mm.
They'll wait for somebody to cause them to make something happen, or they just want to be a part of the action. But rather than I got to go make something happen, and so when you when that is missing in a producer, you don't really have a producer.
Right. It's not a
You
producer.
got something else. And so anyway, he's become very good at that, and so that he uses, and most of my clients do, for kind of the early screening, because you don't
Hmm.
want to waste a lot of time interviewing people that they're not compatible to the sport of being a producer.
Yes.
Why would waste a lot of people that don't have those compatibilities? Let's go make them account manager, send them off to do something else, or put them in the
Yeah.
mailroom. But they're not
Yeah.
compatible to this job because I've defined this job. I know what it is.
To your point, I've told this story on this podcast before, but I took that test because I was in transition and I've always respected and loved Jamie. And I was like, man, I'd love to be a part of a great thing. And Jamie's like, man, I bet you'd be good at sales and all that stuff. So I took that test and he called me and he said, hey, got good news and bad news. Great news is you would be amazing at sales. Bad news is I would never hire you. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, you got to carve your own path. You won't follow. He's like, I got a system. I work here. And if you work my system, you'll be successful. It showed up on this index. You're going to buck the system constantly. And it's actually what propelled me to go do what I'm doing now, which is I started my own company. And, so it's like, it was super helpful to me. That kind of feedback was helpful because I may have taken a job and got into it and say, wait a minute, I'd like to do it this way. And Jamie would be like, no, I know how I want to do this. I know what works. You got to work the path. And so, yeah, I it was super helpful for me. And also on the other side of it, it's really helpful for the person taking the index because it gave me clarity as to what to not. I mean, Jamie wasn't going to hire me anyway, but it gave me clarity that, oh, you're right. Like I need to be that entrepreneur, carving my own path, figuring out my own way type thing. Super, super helpful. Well, I'm curious, what are some of the traits that you see in maybe even toxic traits that you see in underperforming sales organizations? Are there any consistent like trends and then how do great companies avoid those things?
Avoid underperformers.
Yeah, just the toxic trait in an underperforming sales organization.
Yeah, it's a toxic trait. Um,
Or even just trends that you see that, hey, this is something that keeps organizations from performing at a high level.
yeah, I'm working with a new prospect right now that um, they're a high growth firm. They've added like 19 or 20 producers that are unvalidated. Um, a bunch of them are athletes, but new business is really weak. And so you got to go back and go, well, why? Well, like I said earlier, not all athletes are as driven as what you think they are. So
Mm-hmm.
you just because you're an athlete doesn't mean fill in the blank, doesn't mean you're going to be a great producer. So when I see a lot of firms that are underperformers, it's a function of really two things. Leadership that doesn't have a path and say, here's how we go get great. Again, if you go back and you look at all your sports hero coaches,
Mm-hmm.
Belichick and Saban are both, until Belichick had a girlfriend, but Belichick and Saban are both, it's like, they've got a way to do things, right? There's a lot of leaders that don't believe that there's a way to do things, that there's a lot of different ways to get things done. And
Right.
so people get confused, they have chaos, and there is no path. And so when there's no path, people get lost in the forest and it really slows them down.
Mm-hmm.
So that's on leadership. And then on the producer, many times you got the wrong person sitting in the wrong seat. They just
Mm-hmm.
don't have the heart or soul to fight through the ambiguities, the rejection associated with prospecting. Sometimes they just don't have the intelligence
Mm-hmm.
to learn what they need to learn. And so then they're always kind of, they would never, most time they would never vocalize it to you unless you had a chance to get them one-on-one and talk about it, but they
Mm-hmm.
feel inferior because of lack of knowledge, because they don't have the intensity to go study and learn it, or they don't really have the brain power to learn it easily.
Right.
And all roll up, right? Because insurance is it's a great business for two reasons: unlimited product and unlimited prospects. I mean, they're big multi-quadrillion dollar insurance companies that they want to write more business, more policies. So
Mm-hmm.
you run out of product. It's not like
Right.
selling wars or submarines. You never run out of product.
Right.
Second, if you draw a big enough circle, you'll never run out of prospects. Therefore, you can make unlimited money.
Mm-hmm.
So then you just got to come back to, if I can fit the right person into the right slot, man, you can get people to be really successful.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
got kids that within 5 years, they're making 300, 350, sometimes $400,000.
Jeez.
That's great money.
That's great money, especially in that amount of time.
Yeah. And then now they got the next 25 years to go double that or triple that or whatever they want to
Mm-hmm.
do,
It's incredible.
because they had a path and they fit the mold. So I
It's
know,
incredible.
and then just, let's just be transparent on this part. I mean, this podcast, I mean, the reason Jamie's doing it is because he wants to attract people,
Yes.
right? There, there's so many places you can go get a job, thousands of places. You can go get jobs on Wall Street. My daughter works in New York, as a part of the finance industry, and so is her boyfriend. So I see that, and the kind of those guys are putting in 12-hour days,
Mm-hmm.
big time, long days. They make good money, but they're putting, I mean, they're really have to work, and they will always have to do that.
Right.
So you got the finance world. You can go start to sell pharmaceuticals. You could go sell technology, but technology generally kind of peaks and dies because they're going to hot product goes.
Mm-hmm.
Pharmaceutical kind of peaks and dies, goes and go. Insurance, if you can get in this, I don't think, honestly, there's a better business in the world if you fit the mold.
Right. Right.
So that's, all the people out there that are watching this, that are thinking about, should I get into the insurance business and should I consider working with Jamie? If you fit the mold, you ought to get in.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm curious because I love what you're saying about the IGA culture. One thing I've noticed is when the right fit happens at IGA, it's a place where salespeople aren't just producing, but they're thriving and they're sticking around too, or even coming back. Like they'll go and try something and they'll come back. How does a company like IGA create a place like that?
I don't know, because honestly, I personally am not very good at that. I mean, right? Everybody's got their own skills, right?
Right.
Jamie is a generous guy that cares, and because he does, he's going to create an environment. He's going to give people the tools. He's gonna bring the thunder when he needs to bring the thunder, and he's gonna bring a lot of love when he needs to bring the love, and
Yeah.
it's kind of stuff. When I look at some of the strongest leaders that I've got to work with, I think about a guy named Rusty. I think about a guy named Keith. I think about a guy named Mike. I mean, they were great people, if you
Mm-hmm.
will.
Mm-hmm.
people love to work for them and perform for them. Jamie's that same way. And so I think so much of a great culture is because of a leader that really cares a lot, and then they're gonna show that they care, and they appreciate when people do well, and
Hmm.
they're gonna give them the resources and environment to make it happen. That's a great culture.
Yeah.
Contrast that to, my friend, a lot of agencies that, man, this is just a job. We show up every day, just do your job. There's
Hmm.
no energy. There's no fight. There's nobody we're trying to dominate. It's
Hmm.
just, it's a job. You're a professional. Do your job. So guys like Jamie have a gift.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. What advice would you give to maybe a high potential salesperson who might be choosing between, I don't know how to say it right, but one of the big name companies out there, or like a values driven company like IGA? And because you've been in this working specifically with us for a while, what are some of the advice that you would give to them?
Yeah, I mean, in most situations, not all, but you start to go the big company route. I mean, their primary driver is EBITDA. We got to
Hmm.
drive EBITDA, 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 blah, 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 right? So
Hmm.
then, resources start to kind of evaporate. You become a number if you're not careful. You can do well. Obviously, you can do well because there's a lot of people doing well.
Right.
Um, but um, it has so much to do with what kind of coach you want to play for. And in those cases, it's going to be more of a, we're going to recruit you. You're lucky to be at our university. It's a big university. Use the resources. If you need some help, holler at me. But if not, just go to work and do your job. Versus a Jamie thing is like small university, small program. Come in here. We're all family. It's like Coach K was always talking about the brotherhood. You
Hmm.
talk about brotherhood. Brother, they
Hmm.
look out for each other, right? It's just a different vibe. And
Right.
so um, I would just say to somebody that's considering both, don't get starry-eyed if somebody swings a big check at you.
Yeah.
Ask a lot of tough questions and start to imagine what your future will be like 3, 5, 7, and 10 years down the road. And that's really what you want to buy into, because you are, unlike a lot of jobs where you get a salary and a little bonus. Over
Hmm.
here, you get to control your income.
Yes.
You get to be the guy or the gal. And so pick wisely.
That's great advice. That's great advice. Randy, this has been awesome. So helpful, so incredible. Thank you for the work you do, not just with IGA, but around the world, helping businesses grow and thrive and succeed. One just last question. If you could, and this is an impossible question, but if you were to boil down your message to every leader, including myself, we're trying to build a high performing sales culture. If you just had your kind of your one parting thought from your 33 years of doing this, what would it be?
Potential has to be developed in almost every case. Almost every case. So when you see potential in somebody, also be thinking about, okay, how do I go develop this and move that, help them perform? Everybody wants to be a performer. They can't admit they want to be a performer sometimes. You got fears, you got things going on, but everybody wants to do well.
Yeah.
So if I saw the leaders, I go figure out, I mean, be curious enough to ask enough questions, try to get inside that person's head to figure out what is that motivating factor. In other words, is it they want to prove their dad wrong, or they want to make their dad proud? Is it that their spouse and their children, what they want to provide for them that they never got, or because what they got from their parents, they want to do that for their kids too? In other words,
Right.
what is it that they want? What is it that's driving them? And then reverse engineer it back to now help them figure out a path and map out the path, make it a visual thing. Here's what has to happen, and then show them enough energy to keep them focused on that, and you'll do really well.